Uh, Welcome to this week's edition of Mississippi Happenings Podcast. My name is David Owles. I'm your co-host. Along with me is my friend and buddy, Mr. Jim Newman. Jim, say hello.
Good morning. How are you?
It's all good. All good. Um, Joining us today is Kelly Riley. Kelly is the executive director of the Mississippi Professional Educators. Kelly, it's great to have you on to talk to us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic. Jim, will you get us started?
Well, David, we lost half the screen at the top.
It's Keep on going. It's all good.
Uh, yes, Kelly, there's a number of things that have come up, uh, but most recently, at least in the Daily Journal, and hopefully in the newspaper in Jackson, the Clarion Ledger, etc. Uh, Mississippi has a shortage of more than 3,000 teachers. And it has always seemed to me to be, if you've got a shortage, it's probably because you're not paying enough. And I know when I was in college, I wanted to be a teacher until I found out what they paid teachers. And this was in Oklahoma. And I knew that I couldn't support a family on what they paid teachers. So I went a different direction. When was the last time teachers got a raise in Mississippi? And is the starting salary for a teacher with a Bachelor of Arts or Science degree uh, above the not the minimum wage, but above the what's the I'm looking for a term here.
Are we talking about cost of living or?
Me, the,
I'll answer the first part of that question and then lead into how our salary compares to other states. What about that?
it's good.
So the last time Mississippi teachers received a pay raise was in the 22-23 school year, so 4 years ago. That pay raise was passed during the 2022 legislative session. On average, that pay raise provided an average raise of about $5,100. And that piece of legislation and that pay raise package increased the starting salary for a first year teacher with a bachelor's degree to 41,500. Now, in the education world, we compare our average teacher salary, the sort of the benchmark or the standard for Mississippi is how we compare to the SREB average, the Southeastern average. SREB is an acronym for the Southern Regional Education Board. It's a 16 state consortium that advocates and follows education policy in those 16 states. And so the most recent salary information that SREB has collected is for the 23-24 school year. So 2 school years ago, the average salary for a Mississippi teacher at that point of time was $53,704. That compared to the SREB average of $61,847. So you can see that we're about $8,100 below the SREB average. Now, even more shocking is when you look at the national average. The national teacher salary for the 23-24 school year was $72,030. So that puts us at $18,326 below the national average.
That's
Go back and
frightening
repeat.
in a way. Go, Jim.
Go back and repeat that average salary again for Mississippi compared to the southern states.
So for Mississippi, and again, this was the most recent data reflects the average salary for teachers in the 23-24 school year. But in
That,
Mississippi, our average salary was $53,704. The SREB average salary, and that's the average salary across all 16 member states of the SREB, was $61,847. So Mississippi's average salary at that point in time was $8,143 below the SREB average, which of course makes it hard to recruit and retain educators here in Mississippi when our surrounding states are paying higher salaries. The information that I believe you're referring to with the teacher shortage data, that information was just released yesterday during the State Board of Education meeting. And I'll just, of our 4 surrounding states, and this information is as of May 2024. And this data that I'm about to share is from a different source. This is information from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. Starting to our west, Louisiana had an average salary of $60,600. Arkansas was at $61,000. Tennessee was $59,200, and Alabama was $61,800. And we're in the middle and way below at $54,200. So that makes it, very hard, particularly for those school districts that are located in counties along our state's borders, to compete with other states in recruiting and retaining educators.
How long you keep referencing this as the average salary? If I graduated next spring and went to work as a teacher, what would be my starting salary?
It would be $41,500 under the current state salary schedule. So hopefully, if we have a teacher pay raise passed during the upcoming session, it would be higher than that. But currently, it's $41,500.
You can't, that qualifies you for all sorts of subsidies
And
because
several,
that's pathetic.
the challenge and the issue is that unfortunately, our educators are not being paid or recognized for the professionals that they are. And to your point as to, that salary qualifying for subsidies, when the last teacher pay raise was passed in the 2022 session, Senator Dennis DeBar, he's the chairman of Senate Education. He held meetings around the state. In fact, he had one there in Tupelo, and he invited educators and concerned citizens to attend those meetings and share their thoughts. And at almost every meeting, there was an educator or educators present that said, I'm a single mom, I'm a single parent. My children qualify for Medicaid because I don't make enough. And so it's a big challenge. And of course, not only that, but at a salary at that level, Teachers are also forced to have second, third, even fourth jobs. It's very common for educators to take on additional duties at school, a bus driver or being a club or team sponsor that might provide an additional stipend. And of course, that's additional time away from their personal lives and their families. And on top of that, it's additional time that they are working rather than resting. And of course, that can have an impact on their energy and their engagement in the classroom each day.
I don't know what to say other than something has got to happen. Is there
Well,
has any bill been filed?
um, of course, the legislative bill tracking system is not open yet.
Uh,
And to my knowledge, there has not been a specific bill filed. I will tell you that there have been public comments made, and I'm hearing rumblings that we will have a teacher pay raise. But unfortunately, the amount that I'm hearing, and let me stress that this is purely, the Capitol grapevine and nothing documented or specific, is about $2,000. And that is not nearly adequate. At a minimum, any pay raise should be at least $5,000. And one reason is because I'm sure y'all have heard of the ever increasing cost of state health insurance. And as an example, for a teacher that is providing insurance to his or her family, the monthly premium for family coverage has increased by 24% over the last 4 years. And it's just a regular habit that those premiums go up each and every year. And, that negates any pay raise that educators received 4 years ago.
and what the state takes out for retirement system, the PER system, continues to go up because
Right,
it is underfunded.
right. Of course, that 41.5 is not your take home. You have
Okay.
several withholdings from that, and so your take home is much lower than that, and it's a real challenge. And in fact, yesterday I printed out the Department of Education's media advisory when they released the teacher shortage report yesterday, and the Department of Education has become much more vocal about the challenges of teacher compensation, and they are pushing for a teacher pay raise. And in their media advisory, they stated since 2023-24, benefits and or compensation have been increasing factors attributed to teachers leaving the profession. Um, so, it's not just the education community or educators themselves saying, I deserve to be compensated as a professional. You now have the State Board of Education and the Department of Education saying, this issue is contributing to our teacher shortage and to Mississippi educators leaving the profession. I had an email from a member just this morning who said, I have stepped down from my position to take a position in the private sector. And that is becoming more and more frequent.
Are private schools paying more than public education?
Don't have any documentation on that. As a general rule, traditionally they have not. But again, I don't have, any hardcore numbers to substantiate that or to share with you.
I just find it an untenable position to think about a kid going to college, thinking about being a teacher and spending 4 years in college only to get out and make 41,000 when a kid can go to at least here in Lee County, uh, go out to Itawamba Community College and get a 2 year degree for welding or whatever and make more than $41,000 a year starting off. It's just, it's pathetic. And it's no
Well,
wonder that we don't have high tech industries or industries that need really educated people moving into the state.
well, and another issue that we have to think of from the state resources standpoint is we're losing our return on investment from those students that are prepared and go through our university's educator prep programs. Where our state is spending state resources on higher education, and then so many of those students are whether they are Mississippi natives or whether they come to a Mississippi university from another state, they then turn around and leave. So we get nothing for the resources that the state has invested into their education at the university or college level.
Yeah, I've got a freshman over at Ole Miss that graduated from high school in Alabama. So he's paying out of state tuition. And by the time we pay for the out of state tuition and all the other things that go with it, if he were to become a teacher, which he's not going to do, but if he were going to become a teacher, I would not be real happy with the fact that he would graduate and could not make enough money his first year to cover 1 year's tuition costs. That's pathetic.
Yeah. Well, and of course, many of our novice or young teachers have student loans,
Oh,
which
yes.
is which is an additional expense that further along in your career, hopefully you don't have. But it's a real challenge for our novice teachers, and that's why we lose so many, in the first 3 to 5 years. It's critical, and usually if you can keep a teacher for 5 years, at that point they're invested. They may have a family by that point, and so it's more of a challenge for them to leave. But those first few years it's very hard to hold on to them.
How large is your organization?
So our membership changes daily, but on average, we each member has their own. It's a we don't, everybody doesn't start a membership on July 1st. It's based on
Right.
the actual date that they join. So that's why it changes daily. But we serve about 12,000 educators throughout the state. That includes certified and non-certified staff. We also have, in addition to K-12 educators, our membership includes community college and university educators, although primarily, the majority of our members are in the K-12 arena.
Mm-hmm. Does the institutions of higher learning have any influence on teacher salaries?
Um, I mean, they have a vested interest because, the pipeline is shrinking, and of course that impacts their resources. And of course, they're educators as well, and they want to see the profession flourish. They understand the importance, and they have conversations with state leaders and legislators just like we do. But it certainly impacts, their student population.
Is there a group of legislators that are pro education and strong enough to make a difference?
Typically anything at the Capitol is driven by the leadership. So it's a matter of priorities for the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor. Of course, we are facing lots of challenges right now in public education, primarily with school choice, and that is being
Right.
pushed by the House. Traditionally, Lieutenant Governor Hosemann has been very supportive of public education. I mentioned Chairman DeBar previously of the Senate Education Committee. His counterpart in the House is Rob Robertson of Starkville, and we have a fabulous vice chairman in the House, and that is Representative Kent McCarty of Lamar County. So, we have support on both sides of the aisle. Um, and there are those that how they're going to vote on a bill, and those that you're not so sure, and you really have to, have conversations with them. But again, a lot of it is driven by the priorities of the House and Senate leadership.
Since you brought up school choice, tell us a little bit more about that and how that works.
Well, and of course, the devil's in the details. There's primarily there. Let me preface my comments by saying there are several different forms of school choice, and Mississippi actually offers several of those. We have charter schools. Charter schools are one form of school choice. The state has passed over the course of the past several years several different education savings account programs. Those are designed for students with disabilities, including we have speech language ESAs, we have ESAs for students that are dyslexic, and then we also have ESAs for special needs students. Under current law, with regards to a public to public school choice initiative, right now under current law, if a student wishes to leave the district of his or her residency to transfer to another district, they have to request to be released by their home district, and then the home district has to agree to release them, and then on the other end, the receiving district also has to agree to receive them. So we do have public to public transfers currently, but again, both districts have to agree to it. There was a bill passed several years ago that gave choice to active members of the military. And then, of course, parents have the ultimate choice whether they want to send their child, to our state's public schools, to a private school, or if they want to homeschool. The current discussion centers around universal school choice and whether that would be public to private transfers or school choice, or whether it would be public to public. And what I mean by that public to public is that there has been legislation passed as recently as the 2025 legislative session that would amend current law to eliminate a student's current district from being able to deny the student's request to transfer to another district. I anticipate that same legislation will be dropped this year. I anticipate that we will also see bills that would allow for public funds to go to private schools via vouchers or education savings accounts. Of course, as I'm sure y'all are aware, and I mentioned earlier, Speaker White has identified school choice as his top priority for this legislative session. Um, and I believe, based on conversations with rank and file members of the legislature, that they don't support school choice. However, they're being pressured by primarily the speaker in the House, and of course, that makes it even more important for educators, parents, concerned citizens, businessmen and women to reach out to their representative and to their senator, because we can't take anything for granted. We've got to talk to the Senate as well, and say we believe in our public schools. We want to invest in public schools. We don't think public funds should go to private schools where there is no accountability and where private schools do not have to accept every student. It's not parental choice as it's being touted. It is private school choice, because the private school is who decides if they will accept a student or not. And the director of the Mid-South Association of Independent Schools, which is the private school association here in Mississippi, in testifying before the Speaker's Education Freedom Committee several months ago, he said, we want the money, but we don't want the accountability. We don't want the state assessments. We're going to continue to use our acceptance criteria, and it's give us public funds, but don't expect us to be accountable for it. And we just don't think that that is a wise, equitable, or responsible use of public funds. And
Unfortunately,
in addition to that, the question keeps being asked, why now? Why should we have choice? And the answer that we get from House members is, well, all the other states around us are doing it. And, our response is, but have you looked at the results in those states? It's not having, they're not having academic gains. And as my mama always said, just because everybody else jumps off a bridge, are you going to jump off a bridge? And so just because everybody else is, that's not a valid reason. And Mississippi has made significant gains in education. We are recognized nationally for our NAEP scores, for our efforts and our gains in early literacy. We have other states from throughout the country coming to us saying, how did you do this? What resources are you using? What training did you provide to your educators? It's been mistakenly referred to as the Mississippi Miracle, and it has not been a miracle. It has been hard work on the part of our educators, our parents, and our students. And we just don't believe that this is the time to pass school choice when school choice in other states have decimated state budgets. As I mentioned earlier, those states have not had the academic gains that we have. And in many of the states that have provided vouchers for private school tuition, when studies have been done after the program has been implemented, the studies have found that many of the students, most of the students in some cases, that received the vouchers were already enrolled in private schools. They never attended public schools. So it's a subsidy program for private schools. I'm a little passionate about it, in case you can't tell.
And that's what we love. That's what we want to see is the passion is
Well,
passion
and
in it.
our members are opposed to Choice, we do a member survey of our members each year. And in our most recent survey, which was conducted this past October, about 75% of our members were opposed to public funds going to private schools. Likewise, about 68% of our members were opposed to public transfers. And we have surveyed our members for a number of years now on this issue, and we've always, traditionally had a large percentage in opposition to vouchers, to ESAs, and to choice.
And then also your organization also includes members, educators who work with private schools. Is that correct? Okay.
That is correct. A lot of our members, it's not a large number of our members. Primarily, it is those members who have retired from the public school system and then go into the independent school. And many of them will say, if public funds don't need to go to independent schools, and certainly if public funds do, those schools should be held accountable for not only the financial use of those funds, but for the academic results of those students.
Jim?
And as I mentioned earlier, the Private School Association wants none of that.
Gotcha.
I think the citizens, not just of Mississippi, but nationwide, would not ever be in favor of the government giving out money with no accountability. And I can't believe that Mississippi would be willing to take public funds and pay private schools with no accountability whatsoever. And I've heard more than one or two stories about children that have had disabilities of one sort or another, or challenges, going to a public school and then not having those needs met and having to come back to the public schools because the public schools have to provide that.
Right. Public schools have to accept any student who walks in the door, regardless of what those a student's needs or challenges may be. And private schools are not held to those same standards. And you're exactly right. Even with the ESAs for special needs students that I mentioned earlier, I have received several reports from members of students who were in public school. They left to attend a private provider, and they ended up coming back to the public schools because the parents realized the services that they received were just so much more and of a higher quality in the public schools. And I want to point out, Jim, we talked a lot about salaries and specific numbers earlier. A big question, if the state were to approve vouchers, public funds going to private schools, if right now in the state we have about 50,000, approximate number, of students who are either homeschooled or in private school. Our this current school year's base student costs, which is the base amount of state funding that the state provides for each student who is enrolled in public school, is $6,847. If those 50,000 private and homeschool students got a voucher for $6,847, it would be in the range of a cost of $342 million to the state. So that would either have to be new money or those funds would be taken from our current public education system or other state services. And so that's, that's the physical impact. And then I would like to point out, at the local level with regards to public or open enrollment or portability, it's also referred to as either of those terms. You have to raise the question, is it equitable? Is it fair to expect the taxpayers in District A who have paid higher property taxes, who have invested in their schools, who have voted for bond issues to improve their schools' facilities, is it equitable or right or fair to expect them to pay for and subsidize the education of students from districts B, C, and D whose parents are living in a school district with much lower property taxes, but yet want to send their children to District A to receive the benefits of an education in District A? I just don't think, I just don't think I don't think that's what the local taxpayers want.
Can't imagine that they would want that. I know, I don't think anybody in Tupelo anyway, since we subsidize, I guess that's the term, we subsidize our educational system here, teacher salary wise. And I think, well, it's not as good as I would like to see. It's certainly better than a lot of districts in the state, but I don't think it comes close to what it needs to be. Is there any, maybe just pie in the sky, but it seems to me that if you ask for a $5,000 raise, it's always been my experience that you never get what you want. So why would you not want to ask for 8,000 or 10,000 and settle for 5 or 6?
5 or 6. And that's a very valid point. I am saying that at a minimum, it has to be 5,000. Part of that is just due to reality.
Yeah.
And while I believe educators, salaries should be more than that, I think that is the first step. I just don't think politically and realistically that the legislature would approve an 8 or 10,000 one year. Now, what we have not discussed is a problem has been that the legislature is suddenly interested every 3-4 years as it gets closer to re-election time. Then
Right.
they're all of a sudden interested in a teacher pay raise. But that, as I mentioned earlier, that doesn't address annual increases to cost of living, insurance, and other expenses. That's just a one-time shot in the dark. What we need is a multi-year plan to invest in teachers annually and continuously rather than these, oh, it's almost election time, let's give teachers a pay raise. So I'm not skirting your question, and I totally agree with you, but part of it is unfortunately just based on the political reality of how the Capitol works. I certainly think, we mentioned the numbers. $8,000 would get us almost to the SRAB average But I'll tell you what happens, and y'all probably realize this. This happens every time we've had a pay raise. Mississippi passes a pay raise, we jump up a few spots. What do the other states do? Because they're also competing with us to recruit and retain teachers. So then they turn around and pass a pay raise, and we're back down. So it's a constantly moving target. And that is another reason why I think it would be much wiser to have a multi-year plan with significant pay raises passed each year.
Do you think that's possible?
Well, is it possible? Yes. Do we have the resources for it? Yes. The Legislative Budget Committee released its fiscal year 27 budget recommendation last Wednesday. And
Right.
that recommendation leaves 3 billion with a B, $3 billion in state resources unallocated or in reserves. So we have the money. It's just a matter of if it's a priority to pay our educators as the professionals that they are. Is that a priority for state leaders?
Does your group have the financial wherewithal to mount a campaign statewide to bring pressure on the legislators in each of the districts and Senate districts as well to make something like this happen?
So we are 501(c)(6), and so our lobbying efforts are somewhat limited. But um, what what we do as far as a campaign, I send out a weekly email to our members every Friday throughout the year. Those emails are more frequent during the legislative session, and I provide them with the latest news from the Capitol, and I say, call your legislator and tell
Right.
him or her your thoughts, because those local conversations and input from legislators' constituents, that's what should drive their votes. And in fact, in my email this morning, I talked about school choice, and I said, oftentimes rank and file members are under a great deal of pressure from the House or Senate leadership to vote a particular way, but they're elected to represent you, their constituents. And as a general rule at the Capitol, it is said that if a legislator can get 5 to 10 phone calls or face-to-face conversations with their constituents at home who say, I don't care how you're being told to vote, I want you to vote yes or I want you to vote no, that gives them the cover that they need to go against the leadership and to vote how their constituents support or oppose a bill. And so I encourage, one thing we constantly work on is the engagement of our members. Because I tell them, even though I'm at the Capitol, I'm in the committee meetings, I'm in the halls having conversations, you live in their district. You're the one who's going to go into the ballot box and vote for them or against them in the next election. And they work for you. They need to represent you. And so our campaign is through our members because they are the ones that have the most influence with their local respective House or Senate member.
Do you have to be a member of the Professional Teachers Association to be on that mailing list?
No, you don't. We have an external distribution list, and I'll be happy to add both of y'all to that.
I would appreciate it.
Sure.
And I think, David, we need to, I don't know if you can put that up, their email contact, because it's got to be more than just the teachers. The teachers can't do it by themselves. And
Well,
our children
I'm
are
sorry.
the our children are the beneficiaries. So parents need to be involved in this.
And I think, business people, the business community, um, I think that's what's been so striking. I'm sure y'all have seen with the issue of school choice. Um, Multiple school boards throughout the state have passed resolutions opposing school choice, but so have multiple boards of aldermen. And those boards are comprised of local leaders, community leaders, business leaders, and they have said we oppose school choice. We don't want it, in the state of Mississippi. And so it's very important for the business community to be engaged as well.
David,
Yes. Yes.
did you tell me you could get it, the email address posted somehow?
Yes.
I,
I'll get that taken care of. And it is, MPE, Mississippi Professional Educators, MPE.org.
and my email address for anyone who would like it is just Kelly, Kelly, at mpe.org. I'm happy to share that. Just shoot me an email, ask to be put on our external distribution list, and I'll be glad to add you. Those emails go out every Friday morning at 7. And like I said during the session, they sometimes go out at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock, or at the end of a busy day at the Capitol. Um, could I mention one or two other issues that we are going to be closely monitoring at the Capitol in
Yes.
January, February, March?
Of course,
Absolutely.
this is your show.
One is, and one thing I want to touch on before I go further, Speaker White has indicated and said on talk radio multiple times that he plans to have one big bill that addresses several educational issues, including school choice and a teacher pay raise. That's a slap in the face to our educators. A teacher pay raise should not be held hostage to any other issue. School choice and a pay raise are both worthy of independent debate and vote. That puts rank and file members in a challenging situation. For example, if a House member supports a teacher pay raise, which thankfully almost all of them historically, traditionally do, but they oppose school choice, they would have to vote against the bill in order to vote against school choice, but they would also be voting against a pay raise. So it's not fair or respectful of rank and file educators to put them in that position. But more importantly, as we've thoroughly discussed in our conversation today, educators are deserving to be paid as professionals, and any teacher pay raise should not be held hostage to another issue. So just wanted to get that out there because that is a big concern to us. Another issue that we are going to be watching is what's referred to as the Tim Tebow bill. It has been introduced for the past few legislative sessions. This bill is named after Tim Tebow, former NFL football player and now sportscaster. It would allow homeschool students to participate in extracurricular activities in the local schools. Our public school students have to maintain a 2.0 GPA in order to participate in extracurricular activities, whether that's football, baseball, cheer, show choir, debate. The last year's bill, if it had been passed, would have required any homeschool student who wanted to participate in public school activities to submit a portfolio of their work. And it then placed the responsibility and burden on the local school administrator to review that portfolio and determine and make a decision as to if it was comparable and equivalent to a 2.0 GPA. That's an additional responsibility and time on that administrator related to a student who is not enrolled in his or her school. And it also, I believe, opens the door for an upset homeschool parent whose child may be denied for them to turn around and sue the administrator and or school district. As one administrator in Northeast Mississippi, I would add, said, they don't want to sit in our classrooms. They don't want to eat our cafeteria food. They don't want our name on their diploma, but they want our name on their jerseys. And it's just something that we are opposed, and for multiple reasons. Notably the burden that it would place on our administrators, but also, how is a public school parent going to feel if a homeschool student walks up and takes his or her child's position in show choir or on an athletic team? So we're going to be watching that. And then also, I'm sure y'all have had some conversations about the new Tier 5 for PERS. It increases the required service time for all state employees, including educators, but it reduces the guaranteed benefits. It is going to prove to be a huge challenge in recruiting and retaining not only teachers, but all state service employees. Just this week, Yazoo City has issued a state of emergency because they don't have enough policemen and they can't recruit enough policemen. So this goes into effect for anyone who enters state service or joins PERS on or after March 1st of 2026. I'm sure y'all have seen the reports in the newspapers and on the news that first responders are now asking for a separate retirement system. I just, it's crazy to expect our teachers and first responders to work in such stressful jobs for 35 years. And so we are, one of our legislative priorities is that Tier 5 would be tweaked and revisited. And I'm hopeful that we will see some legislation along those lines.
I've always wondered about the PERS system because it doesn't seem to make as much money off the investment as I know is being made in the private sector. I've got multiple friends that their 401ks or IRAs or their investments on an annual basis are running anywhere from 15 to 20% increase. And PERS has never come close to that.
Well, as it relates to the new changes under Tier 5, of course, one of the common concerns is you hear, especially this time of year when the cost of living adjustment checks go out to retirees, PERS members that fall under Tier 5 will not get a guaranteed COLA. As it relates specifically to education, in addition to increasing the 30 years to 35 years of service, currently under state law, when an educator retires, he or she can use their accumulated unused leave can go towards their retirement in the form of service credit. So it can actually, they may have worked 25 years, they could have 25 and a half, 26, 27 years as a final amount of
Right.
service time due to that accumulated leave. Tier 5 members will not be able to use unused accumulated leave towards PERS. And what that means for our schools is that, and of course, this is for those individuals, again, who joined on or after March 1st. So it's several years down the road. But when those individuals in Tier 5 get ready to retire, they're going to burn through all of their leave, which means we're going to have schools trying to find substitutes for those teachers that are out. And substitutes have been a challenge for 5 to 10
Yes.
years now. And so what happens when a school district doesn't have a substitute, they call on other teachers during their planning times to go and cover the absent teacher's class. And so teachers are losing their planning time because they're covering other teachers' classes. So there's just lots of issues. And, we had a superintendent whose daughter is in an educator prep program. He was keeping her updated as to the progression of the PERS bill last session. And the day that it was passed, he called and told her, and she said, "Daddy, I'm going to Alabama." And so it's just another contributing factor to the teacher shortage here in our state.
Well, teachers contribute to PERS, and the state does a matching contribution. But who controls the investing of the money?
That falls to the PERS board, and they, of course, have consultants and actuaries, and that all falls under the scope of the PERS board.
So,
And when I say consultants, financial advisors, investment advisors.
and I'm willing to bet they're friends.
Can't speak to that.
I know. I wouldn't expect you to. That's just a personal opinion, but I know how government works. That's true not only in the state but in the federal government as well. Friends
And
get
I will,
hired.
I will say another issue related to PERS. 2 years ago, there was a bill introduced that would have changed the composition of the PERS board. Right now, the PERS board is comprised of representatives from the different membership sectors of state service, as well as some ex officio members like the state treasurer. And the bill would have changed the composition of the board to diminish those PERS retiree, the members' representation, and to increase the legislative representation. And that is a big concern to state employees and retirees, and that is also something that we will be monitoring. There was a pretty huge backlash, and so I don't think it is as likely that we will see a bill specifically related to the composition of the board, but it's something that we'll be monitoring.
It is. Got a lot of issues coming up.
Never a dull moment at the Mississippi State Capitol. No session is easy or stress-free.
Yeah.
And as they say at the Capitol, nothing is dead until it's dead, which
Dead.
means nothing is dead until Sonny dies. So
That's right.
you've got to be over there and engaged and talking and monitoring every day throughout the session.
Well, Kelly, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And we would love to talk to you anytime, and especially during the next year as the legislative session gets started. To our viewers, to our subscribers, yes, please contact Kelly at mpe.org. Please go to their website, mpe.org. And this has been great, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Well, thank y'all so much. I've enjoyed the conversation, and Merry Christmas to both of you and your families.
Yes, you too. Jim,
I
come
know.
on, rattle your cup.
This is just like Kelly. This is just like education. Uh, Nothing's free, and it costs money to do these podcasts. Uh, we try to get at least one, possibly two a week, and we talk to people like Kelly, uh, who know what's going on, who are trying to make things happen, who are trying to make the state a better place to live and to raise our children. And like I said, it costs money to do it. So if you've got an extra $5 or 10, we'd love to have it. The programs that we have done, and you're watching this one, are primarily supported by your two hosts, David and myself, and we're going to continue to do it. But there's nothing like seeing somebody send in a little bit of money, and we know that we're getting out and people are getting involved and want to see change happen. So, David, if you'll be kind enough to tell people where they can contribute, I would
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. Cash App is the $ MS Happenings. PayPal is the @ MS Happenings. Also, you can contact us at mshappenings1, that's the number one, at gmail.com. We do want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to talk about. We want your comments, your criticisms, your observations, and all of that. It is important to all of us. And this is Mississippi Happenings. Yes, we talk about Mississippi things, but also everything that happens in Washington also affects us. And also regardless of your political affiliation, uh, you know, public education is important to all of us. So, there's not a Republican side or a Democrat side on that. It's all about public education, taking care of our teachers who are professionals and who should be paid as professionals. So we do appreciate that. And Kelly, once again, thank you so much. Jim, once again, good to see you. And please contact us, and we'd love to talk to you. Y'all take care. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes.